All right, we're with Macbeth. Act 2, Scene 2. Good stuff about to happen here. We're at the castle. Let's just pick it right up with Lady Macbeth. That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. Hark, peace! It was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman, which gives the sternest good night. He is about it, the doors are open, and the surfeited grooms do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die. Okay, so she says she's, given the bodyguards a bunch of alcohol and they've passed out. Then Macbeth says, "Who's there? What ho?" Lady Macbeth, "Alack, I'm afeard they have awaked, and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark, I laid the daggers ready. He could not miss 'em. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I'd had done it." Okay, so Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are in different places at this point, and both are feeling a little bit on edge. And Lady Macbeth even says, "I would have killed Duncan, except he resembled my father." Okay, so, if you're going to murder someone, make sure you just lay off if they look like your pops. Okay, good moral of the story there. All right. Enter Macbeth with the bloody daggers. Lady Macbeth then says, "My husband." Macbeth says, "I have done the deed." Didst thou not hear a noise?" Lady Macbeth says, "I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry. Did not you speak?" "When?" "Now, as I descended. Aye. Hark, who lies in the second chamber?" "Donalbain." "This is a sorry sight." He's looking at his bloody hands. And Lady Macbeth says, "A foolish thought to say a sorry sight." Now Macbeth is going to be talking about the things that he heard while coming back from killing the king. And we learn that one of the king's sons, Donalbain, lies in this chamber. "There's one did laugh and sleep, and one cried, 'Murder!' that they did wake each other. I stood and heard them, but they did say their prayers, and addressed them again to sleep. There are two lodged together. One cried, 'God bless us!' and amen the other. As they had seen me with these hangmen's hands, listening their fear, I could not say amen, when they did say God bless us." "Consider it not so deeply." "But wherefore could I not pronounce amen? I had most need of blessing, and amen stuck in my throat. These deeds may not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad." Methought I heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more, Macbeth does murder sleep, the innocent sleep. Sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labor's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher and life's feast." "What do you mean?" Still it cried, "Sleep no more to all the house. Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more." "Who was it thus cried?" "Why, worthy Thane, you do unbend your noble strength to think so brain sickly of things. Go, get some water, and wash this filthy witness from your hand. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go, carry them, and smear the sleepy grooms with blood." All right, I'm going to pause. Great stuff happening. First, Macbeth, on his way back, he says he hears all these crazy things as he's walking by Malcolm and Donalbain's chambers. Those are the king's sons. He says he heard strange laughter, cries of murder, and he heard them saying their prayers, going back to sleep. And Macbeth was thinking that he needed to have a spiritual connection to God here. And he says he has amen stuck in his throat, right? He can't get the words out to ask for God's forgiveness. And this shows a disconnect from God, one of the main topics in this story, which would have really appealed to the audience at the time, this loss of God. And this loss of God comes from putting your faith in supernatural creatures like the witches, and from being inspired to act viciously upon what they might suggest. And Lady Macbeth is very upset to see her husband this way because he's all emotionally distraught. And she tells him this great line, "You do unbend your noble strength to think so brain sickly of things." Like, you're making yourself sick. You're making yourself seem weak by thinking of the repercussions of your actions. And Lady Macbeth then condemns her husband. She's like, "Why did you bring the daggers here? The plan was to lay him on the guards. You messed up the whole plan." And Macbeth is torn, and he's like, "I'm not going back there. I can't even look on what I've done. I'm not going to look at that again." To which Lady Macbeth acts annoyed, and she basically calls him a coward, and she says, "Infirm of purpose, give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms withal, for it must seem their guilt." So she takes the daggers, and she's going to smear blood all over the bodyguards. Okay, and then we have a knock within. "Whence is that knocking?" Macbeth says. "How is it with me when every noise appalls me? What hands are these?" He's looking at his bloody hands. "Ha! They pluck out mine eyes. Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red." Enter Lady Macbeth. She says, "My hands are of your color, but I shame to wear a heart so white. I hear a knocking at the south entry. Retire we to our chamber. A little water clears us of this deed. How easy it is then! Your constancy hath left you unattended. Hark! More knocking. Get on your nightgown, lest occasion call us and show us to be watchers. Be not lost so poorly in your thoughts." Macbeth then says, "To know my deed, 'twere best not to know myself. Wake Duncan with thy knocking, I would thou couldst." So at the end of Act 2, Scene 2, Macbeth, he has major guilt. Okay, we know this because he says, "I wish I could wake Duncan." He hears knocking at the gate, and they're freaking out. Who's here? So they're going to go pretend to be sleeping. But he says he would wake Duncan if he could. Lady Macbeth is acting like she's annoyed with her husband for appearing so cowardly and weak. Macbeth uses, can't find it on my screen here, but Macbeth says, "Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hands will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red." So in this great bit of figurative language, it's very hyperbolic. He exaggerates and says like he feels so much guilt that if he were to try to wash his bloody hands in the ocean, instead of that blood coming off his hands, it would pollute the entire ocean with the stain of his guilt. Okay, so he's using that figurative language. Shakespeare's using that figurative language to express Macbeth's guilt. And then you contrast that with Lady Macbeth, who says, again, I can't really find it, but she says something like, "My hands are of your color, but I shame to wear a heart so white." White being a color associated with innocence here. And she's like, "I've got blood on my hands too, but I don't feel any guilt." Okay. So they're very different psychological places. And she delivers another really famous line. She says, um, "A little water clears us of this deed. How easy it is then." Okay, a little water. It's like, oh, a little water, and all is well. No guilt here at all. Okay, so again, it's Shakespeare using multiple examples of imagery and figurative language in order to contrast the guilt of the two Macbeths. All right, I think we'll stop right there. Great job so far.